This video is based on capacity utilisation. It's a topic for AQA AS Business Studies Unit 4 Operations, but it can also be used in other units as well. For example, in Unit 9 for A2 Business when looking at offshoring, because it relates directly to outsourcing as well, which I'll go through later. The definition is a measure of the extent to which the productive capacity of a business is being used. So it can be defined as the percentage of total capacity that is actually being achieved in a given period. So if you think about your classroom right now, okay, and think about how many seats and tables are in your classroom. Imagine there's 30, and imagine, okay, so you've got a capacity, an actual capacity, you've got a maximum capacity of 30, and let's say there's 29 students in your class. So you'd get your 29 divided by 30, and it'd get you 0.96, or let's say 0.97. You times it by 100, and that would get you a capacity utilisation of 96.7%. So you may argue, well, that's high. Is that not good? Or does that not mean that they're utilising their resources? Does that not mean that they're getting as many students in that classroom as possible? And you could argue that, definitely. But think about it from the perspective of quality, and have a look at it from the point of view of the teacher as well. The teacher has to get through all 29 students. That means that their marking is going to take longer, and it might impact the quality of their marking. It might mean the coordination, the communication with the students is not as effective because they have to communicate to all 29. They'll have to make sure that they check up on the motivation and the progress of all 29 students. If they want to do one-to-one, it'll be more difficult because of that. So you could argue, actually, the teacher is experiencing more pressure because it's got a high percentage of capacity utilisation. So with capacity utilisation, we don't want a low number, but we also don't want it to be too high, which again I'll go over later. So the formula, as I've mentioned before, is actual output divided by maximum output times by 100. So the best way to do this is just by practice. So what I want you to do is have a go at these 4 questions. They get more challenging as they go along. You can pause the video, show your workings, because with these type of questions, the examiner, you might get awarded calculation marks, but it'll also make sure that there's less chance of making mistakes. So the first one, you've got a car manufacturer. They're producing 16, but they've got capacity to produce 20. 16 divided by 20, times it by 100 to get a percentage, and you've got 80%. Now, 80% is not too bad, okay? I'd probably say it's quite a good number. Beyond that, it might start putting pressure on the car manufacturers. But at the moment, it suggests that they're utilising their resources quite efficiently, and therefore you could argue that their productivity rate is quite high. The second one, a restaurant can seat up to 60 guests, but on average they're sitting 38 diners, so therefore 38 divided by 60 times by 100 gets you 63.33%. Now, if this is an average, it suggests that during the week, probably in their non-peak hours, they are really struggling with getting obviously customers to sit down. I would be concerned with a number of 63.33 because it suggests that I'm not utilising my capacity well enough. The waiters, the waitresses are maybe not being worked as efficiently as they could be, simply because we're not getting the numbers of customers in. The catering staff, again, they might be preparing meals that might go wasted because, again, they're expecting a number of customers which they are not receiving. So I would be quite concerned, and I would want that to be higher. Now, the next one is a slightly tricky one, okay? So because what it says, it gives you a yearly number of what they can deal with, so their overall capacity of calls, which is 312,000, but it says an average of 5,250 a week they're actually making. So therefore, you have to transfer a week into a year, and to do that, you have to think about it being 52 weeks in a year. So once you've times it by 52, you should get 27,440 calls that are being made. You divide that by the overall amount, which is 312,000, times it by 100, and you get 87.5%. Now, I'd start to be getting concerned with this number. 87.5%, especially considering the industry it is in terms of call centres, and the amount of calls sometimes can become very negative and demoralising and could demotivate you. Those amount of calls that you're making a year could, again, if you think about the employees, it could put a lot of stress on the employees. So again, I'd be starting to be concerned that I'm putting a little bit too much pressure on the employees. I need to consider how I could kind of maybe help avoid this. So again, this is more of a challenging question. It's saying the company was producing 640 units a month, so that's how much they're kind of utilising, and the capacity utilisation was 80%, but it doesn't give you the overall amount. So you have to rearrange the formula. So what I've done is I've done 640 divided by 0.8 in terms of the percentage, and that would get me 800. So I know, okay, their initial overall potential capacity was 800 units. But it's increased. Maybe they've extended it some way, but they've increased capacity by 10%. So I've times it by 1.1 to get a 10% increase, and that gives me a new capacity, overall capacity of 880.790. Now I know that they produce 790, so I have to do my 790 divided by 880.790. I have to times it by 100, and I'd get 89.7, and again I'd be worried that that's heading towards putting too much pressure on this company. Now again, I suppose, what type of number then are you looking for a good level of capacity utilisation? In terms of 87.5%, I said that might be quite a lot for a call centre, okay? But I suppose I wouldn't be too concerned at this moment in time. I'd keep an eye out, because what I would say is a good level of capacity utilisation is between 80 to 90%. Now, if it exceeds that 90%, which question 3 and question 4 are starting to, then I'd start to be concerned about the pressure. In terms of question 4, it's 89.7, so it's very, very close. So I'd be keeping an eye on that, just making sure if it does increase, all right, what would be the consequence of that? Would it be negative? It might not be, but I'd just keep an eye out. In terms of the 87.5%, I'd actually perhaps, because I don't know what the company is for question 4, and I do know what the type of industry is for question 3, I'd be probably more concerned about question 3 and question 4 just because of the nature of the call centre to business. So even though it's 87.5, which is less than 89.7, I'd still be keeping more of an eye out on 87.5 in case it does reach that 90%, I suppose, barrier in a fashion. Because when it exceeds 90%, you might start thinking, okay, this is risky now. How is it going to impact different certain, I suppose, aspects of production, which we're going to look at now? So I'm going to look at 3 factors. Factor number 1, if you're reaching that 80 to 90%, then that's a good indicator of high demand, because really you shouldn't be producing as much if you haven't got the demand to meet, because all that would mean is, again, waste and so on. Or obsolete products. So usually if it's between 80 to 90%, it does suggest that there's a high indication of high demand. If you think about restaurants, and that's, I think it was 60-odd%, that suggests that the demand needs to increase. Also, if it's between like 80 and 90%, it suggests that the business has a higher chance of achieving economies of scale, because they're being productive, they're being efficient, they're utilising their resources effectively, and because of that, it might help them to reduce their unit costs, but also produce at a high level. And again, as I've said, it should indicate that the labour force is being productive. Now, the issues with high capacity, especially when you go beyond that 90%, you could argue, could it be demotivating for the workforce? Could it be, I suppose, putting too much pressure on the workforce? And could that possibly impact the quality of the workforce? Now, if it's production, it could be causing a higher scrap rate with further waste. If it's a service-orientated industry, then again, is that going to impact customer service? Both of these might, again, it might cause a negative reputation with customers. So if it does start getting towards 80 to 90% utilisation, what can you do? Or even if it's really maximising the utilisation and you've got no capacity left. Now, the easy answer to say is, build a new factory, okay? Hire more workers, increase the land availability, but that takes time. So therefore, you might have to consider short-term strategies. So for example, outsourcing or maybe contracting from other companies. So what I mean by outsourcing, and again, it's usually related to international, but it doesn't have to be, is where you hire a different firm to carry out your production on your behalf. And therefore, it boosts capacity because not only are you producing goods, but also the other company are also producing goods on your behalf. Other ways of improving capacity, so for example, overtime might be an option, because again, if you've only got so many hours within their contract and they're not, maybe there's more demand, and they need to make sure that they're continuously utilising, then again what they could do is could bring in the staff. If they work overtime, they're obviously producing more goods, they're meeting that demand, and they're helping them to utilise an even bigger capacity than it once was. Ways of improving capacity even further again is the use of capital goods, technology, because technology can make things happen at a faster rate, it's continuous, and therefore you can actually boost capacity because you're able to produce more, and you've got a bigger potential capacity than you did before the capital goods.